got to when I first moved here. And ride my bicycle. Can you tell I'm riding my bicycle? But anyway, so we can't fathom someone really desecrating churches. But it happens. It makes the news when it happens. We actually had some vandalism here at our church. Someone took the catalytic converter off of our church bus. I personally can't see why go to all that trouble to do it, but, they did. So if you're interested in stealing our catalytic converter, we don't have one anymore. They told us our bus is so old it doesn't need it anymore. It doesn't be required. So don't come stealing our catalytic converters, y'all. So these people here aren't going to do it, but, someone might be, say, oh, yeah, I just heard there's easy pickings over it. No, we don't have one, okay? So the abomination of desolation was the sacrilege of the temple. And this has already happened once before. In your quarterly, your student quarterly, it mentioned this guy that went and, he even offered a pig sacrifice on the altar, which is the absolute abomination you can do in the Jewish temple. Titus in AD 70, destroying the temple. That's an abomination. But I think even here, Jesus is talking to the end times. Probably referring to that one that occurred in AD 70, but I think he's talking about the end times, when that happens again in the end. Now, personally, I plan on living a long, long time. But I hope I don't see that. I hope I'm already gone and be with the Lord before that happens. But if it should happen while I'm here, then we know things are really going down fast. So basically, Jesus is talking that the temple is going to be desecrated in a way that it's never been desecrated before. And if you've been here when Pastor Lewis was doing one of his end times revelation Bible studies, you've seen when he talked about the Antichrist coming and performing the abomination of desolation in the temple at the end times. So, like I said, the holy place, those were the chambers that were inside next to the Holy of Holies. Remember, the Holy of Holies, the high priest could only go in there one time during the year. And what would they do to make sure that they could get him out because nobody else could get in there? Tied a rope around his ankle in case he died in there, because if he wasn't good enough and to stand with and he was drugged down, nobody else could get in there, so they had to drag him out some way. So that's what they would do. So, who readeth, let him understand. Take this seriously. We're not just talking to bide the time. We're not just talking so that way we can have conversation around the coffee table. This is something that's going to happen. What Jesus has said, what Daniel has said. What they did in AD 70, when the armies come to besiege Jerusalem, leave, and we'll see that. So when you see these happening, flee unto the mountains of Judea. Now, Judea is not really a place that's outlined with boundaries and borders. We say we're in the Mingo community, but you can't find a map somewhere that you might find a map that says Mingo voting area, but you're not going to find a map that says this is Mingo. And go down on 421. There's Mingo Church up there too, and so it's after they came back from the exile from Babylon and everything else, they basically just gathered up in this big old area near Jerusalem. And as a matter of fact, one thing about this Judea area, it's always near Jerusalem. Okay, so this is the area around there. I mean, I got a Godwin post office mailbox on my house, and I live nowhere near Godwin. You know, I'm like, what, 16 miles away down the road, and I have to zigzag and go across 301 all the way on the other side. And, I'm a lot closer to Newton Grove than I am God. Well, they got me. So just remember, Judea here is not a defined, this is you have now entered Judea kind of area. So, Jesus made it clear. When this happens, get out of town quick, folks. Don't dilly-dally. Get away. Now, the good thing about the hills that are around in this area, there were a lot of caves up there. Now, this was a good thing and this was a bad thing. It was a bad thing because robbers would hang out there. Good place to hide where you can't find them. I was visiting with some folk yesterday. They live over, some of them lived over in Tennessee. And it was really funny because their side of town was Tennessee. The other side of town was North Carolina. And it said in the olden days, someone would commit a crime on the North Carolina side of town and just go across the street and be in Tennessee, and they couldn't be chased anymore. And I reminded people, when Carowinds first opened up, you had to be careful if you took a school group over there, because you had to get waivers to transport those students and those children across the state line, because, Carowinds is on that state line. And so sometimes you were in North Carolina, sometimes you were in South Carolina type of thing. And, you don't have to do that nowadays. But, back then you had to be careful about these kind of things. So get out of Dodge as quick as you can. That's what them bad guys used to do back then and the other times. They have their escape routes. But the good thing about all those caves is a lot of them were empty. And so in case of an emergency, in case of natural disaster, you go up there and you have a safe, secure place in which to stay. Temporary, of course. Now, you're not going to have the same comforts as you have at home, but at least you're safe. So, the desecration of the temple is going to signal the coming end. Plain and simple. Now, in the next set of verses we have, verses 17 through 20, we're going to see that distress is going to come on suddenly. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of the house. Neither let him which in the field return back to take his clothes. And woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. But pray that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day. So just like I said, people were going about their average, everyday things during the time of the Lord's Supper. When this thing happens, people are going to be going around doing their everyday things. You're not going to wake up in the morning and say, I got that burn in my knee. I guess that means something bad's going to happen today. You're not going to have any kind of premonition. Your dogs and your cats and your birds are not going to tweet, meow, or growl any differently than they do to let you know something bad is going to happen today or tonight or whatever. There's going to be no warning. Now, this first one that he gave, this person that's up on the housetop, we're talking about the days before air conditioning. That was a long time ago. We've had air conditioning. How long we've had air conditioning, Keith? About 100 years? Oh, yeah. Well, he's younger than we are, so yeah. I can remember actually days before air conditioning when you designed a house, you designed it with flow-through ventilation, so that way, you you turned on a fan in one part of the house and you got ventilation all throughout. And great big old house fans going on. I remember those kinds of days. But back then, they didn't even have flow-through ventilation in their houses. I guess it's kind of like for those of us that went to Honduras and built a little 26 by 26 little hut, and that family of 6 was absolutely just thrilled to have. And he'd gone over to his mother-in-law's house and strung a wire from her electricity, because she was paying for electricity, and run it to his house so he could have a light bulb in his house. So they had like the living area inside. And then they have a cooking area outside, because you don't want that heat to be in the house. And, of course, the toilet facilities and everything else are outside. So I imagine that back then, houses hadn't advanced that much in 2,000 years. So, they had a mud or a clay or a stick house, and the main dwelling inside, cooking area outside, little access area on the side or back, so that way they could go up on the roof. And then up on the roof, they could go and socialize in the cool of the evening, in the cool of the morning, visit with friends, have some s'mores. I like s'mores. Did I tell y'all this is May? I celebrate my birthday the entire month of May, not just on my particular day. So, go ahead and make your preparations. I expect to hear from y'all too. And so they just socialize. Sometimes, if it was pleasant enough, the family would take their mats and read mats up there and sleep out in the open, things like that. Remember the 4 friends and the paralyzed, what they did? They went up on the roof, and what? When they couldn't get through the crowd, they went up and picked a hole through the roof, and, wouldn't it be great to have friends like that? I digress. But, so here's this fella. He's up there. He's cooling it. He's had a hard day at work, and he's enjoying himself. Mama's gone and got him a mint julep tea, and he's up there with his s'mores or whatever, his little snacks and wafers and things like that. And he says, when Jesus says that, when you see this coming, don't get off that roof. Come on down. Don't even bother going inside and getting anything. Pretend your house is on fire. Don't try to go back in. Yes, I know those pictures are priceless. Yes, I know those things are priceless. But if it's not people, you don't need to go back. Or Roy was my people too. Yeah. Go back for my Roy. No, Roy was never anywhere I wasn't, so I wouldn't have to go back for Roy. I have to get Kathy. But, so don't go and bother trying to get anything out of the house. Get away. So that was the first example. Then he went and looked at the next one. Now, like I said, this first guy could have been up there eating, relaxing, praying, maybe have his prayer time or whatever. This next guy's out working. So he's out there, he's in the field, he's been plowing or planting. Y'all know I'm not a farmer, so I'm talking about things I know nothing about, right? My weeds are doing great, by the way. So, or he could have been out there taking care of his animals, herding and everything else. I love bacon. Of course, if you're Jewish, you don't do anything with the bacon there. But anyway, he's out there doing his thing, taking care of his business as he has to. And he sees it coming. Jesus says, don't even bother to pick up your cloak. Just run and go. Get out of there. This is how sudden, this is how urgent your need to escape is going to be. Don't stop for anything. Unless someone's fallen down, then you can help them pick it up. Now, Jesus is not trying to curse women in verse 19. He's trying to point out a very difficult situation here that's occurring. Now, we're all Southern gentlemen here. And we know we see a damsel in distress, we're going to stop and help, right? Kathy says, I help everybody else. And we do, right? We do. That's the way we are down here. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I see turning around on 13. I just go up there and say, hey, listen, I got to turn around up there in my house. Just go ahead, turn around. Don't back up on this highway. UPS, FedEx, all the delivery drivers, you send anything to the house, they already know. I'm going to get mad if you leave your truck on the road or you try to pull back up. Just go ahead, come up to the house, turn around, and go out. Dead grass does not bother me. I'd rather have dead grass than a dead person. You know? That's the way we are down here. We're friendly. We like people. And he says, think about a pregnant woman. She has trouble enough moving around. How's she going to get out of this terrible situation? You see a pregnant woman, you better help. I think he's kind of admonishing the disciples. That's the gospel according to Josh. That's just me. Because we're good old Southern men down here. We're gentlemen. So, and then another one just almost as bad is a young woman that's carrying an infant in her arms. She can't move very quick. She's got to take care of that child. So, when you read that in some translations, that woe to them, it seems like it's really putting a curse on them and saying, it's bad that you... No, it's not. He's saying, watch out for these people. They need help. They're in an extra, really difficult situation. They have to find some way to escape too. And if that means we help, then we help. That's what we're supposed to do anyway, isn't it? We shouldn't be commanded to do that. Then in verse 20, he says, well, let's look at the weather. This is before they have nice paved roads. It says before they developed the interstate system. The interstate system we didn't actually pick up in the United States until after World War II. We actually saw how the Germans, with their Autobahn system, were able to move their equipment and their troops so quickly from one side of the country to the other side, north, south, east, and west. And we came back and said, you know what? We need that. And President Eisenhower, who was General Eisenhower at the time, came back and said, we need an interstate system. So if you go back and you research your history, you'll see it's the Eisenhower interstate system. So, but they're still working on that. It's been, 1,000 years it seems like. At least they got that area by Lumberton taken care of, but it's moved over here to Dunn. So, so they're not talking about paved roads. They're not talking about having brick roads. They just regular, everyday, hard, packed down roads. Now, what happens when it rains and you got hard, packed down roads? Now, remember, we're not talking about cars and planes and jets here. We're talking about four-legged animals, hoofed, and wagons and carts. And there's no standardized dimensions for the, what's the length from one tire to the other tire? Whatever. Yeah, the wheelbase or the gauge, railroad gauge. Yeah, but your wheelbase is the other one. Good guy. Thank you. Appreciate it. So there's no standard. So everybody who builds their cart builds it based on what they have at hand. So you got ruts here, you got ruts there, and everything else. It rains, and what you got? Mud. Deep, dank, yucca, mud. Take your shoes off because you get better traction barefoot, right? So, And then in the wintertime, not only do you have that rain, but you also have that freezing area, cold and everything else. Is wintertime, what happens in wintertime? Days get shorter, so that means night comes quicker. So that means everything gets more dangerous at night, right? What's that commercial they pulled because that one young lady was running by herself at night? And they say, you know, in America, women do not run by themselves at night. They're too frail and fragile, and too many bad, evil things happen in America to single women who run at night. So they apologized for the commercial and pulled it. That's sad, isn't it? That in America, we have people thinking we're evil. You have Americans thinking we're evil? That we don't know right from wrong? That our default mode is evil? And then one more time, he said that they're going to struggle, is if it's on the Sabbath. Now, I don't cut my grass on Sunday. You notice my ditch bank's not cut. It won't be cut today. It'll be cut tomorrow. Is there some scriptural law that says I cannot do that on a Sunday? Not really. You're going to find nothing as the Bible says. However, we do have honor the Sabbath day. On our Sabbath, we turn into Sunday, so we honor God by our actions and our things on Sunday, so I don't work on Sunday. Back then, they had rules. You could only walk so far. Just about a little bit over half a mile. If you walked over that, then you were working. And you couldn't work on Sabbath. So, if this desolation were to come on the Sabbath, you can only go half a mile, then you got to stop. Or else you're breaking the Sabbath. You know? It's just nearly impossible to go on the Sabbath and not break it. Plus, also, all the shops are closed. No time to wait for the shops to open so you can get your emergency supplies and go. So the point that Jesus is trying to make is this is going to happen so quickly. Be ready for it. So in the last set of verses, we'll see that it's going to be so difficult, God's mercy is going to cut it short. For then shall the great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor shall ever be, and except those days should be short, there should no flesh be saved, but for the elect's sake those days shall be shortened. Again, borrowing phrases from Daniel. This is coming soon. It's not too distant. It's going to intensify as the time grows near. At that moment, this tribulation is coming. And in verse 22, those days, that's that terrible time of tribulation, is going to be so horrible that no flesh should be saved. Pretty much everybody's going to be annihilated. So what's going to happen? God's going to have mercy. He's going to shorten that time so that people will be saved. Now, we are already saved spiritually. I think here he's talking about a physical, actual life saving. So what's going to happen? We have to stand. Jesus said these difficult times are going to happen, so we have to stand. We have to be ready. We don't know when the Lord's going to return. We can spend all kinds of time, but we've got to expect it. We can't be caught off guard. And then third, remember, it's going to take courage. We have to be ready. God's promise He's going to be with us in good times and in bad. We'll have a prayer and then we'll live it out. Thank you, God, for promising not to abandon us. We ask you to remind us often of your presence so that we can go boldly and lead others to Christ. We have this time of worship that we anticipate being led by our pastor. And as a part of the congregation, we pray, dear Father, that we worship as we intend, as you want us to. Thank you for the leadership that we have in our church with our pastor and our church leaders. Be with us now until the time that we meet again. We ask this in thy Son's name. Amen.